bring on my next guest, Rod Rodriguez. He's going to come on. He has an amazing podcast. I know I say that about all the podcasters that come on here, but truly you should be listening to all these podcasts. They're good. I don't listen to crap podcasts. I will say this right here before we bring on our guest, because people have asked, oh, you say every podcast is good. No. Let's be clear. There's good podcasts and there's crap podcasts. I don't listen to crap podcasts. I don't put crap podcasts on this show. I put the best of the best on because they're going to help you. So Rod does a couple different things. Number one, he produces and is part of an amazing podcast, works with Connecting Vets. And also he has a company that can help you. If you're trying to get a podcast started, he can help you guide your way there. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my good bud, Rod Rodriguez, onto the show. Rod.
To the point with Eric Mitchell. Wow.
I know we do that every once in a while. We try. And we don't rant that much, which is odd. I want to.
You need more rants for sure. By the way, calling a Marine a soldier, one of my favorite pastimes. I really love living in Virginia, so close to all of these Marine, Quantico. Especially when you're civilian. Excuse me, soldier, I have a question.
Oh, I see. This is why the Marine Corps and Army just loves each other. It is fun. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I've actually done that to a Marine just because, especially if I see a butter bar. And I love officers, don't get me wrong. But sometimes it's fun when I was out. When we used to go to this thing called the mall. I don't know if you remember the mall.
Is that before the sick days?
Yeah, the sick days. Yes.
The sick days. Yes. I remember these times.
Where everybody in America needed to be home, despite if they were sick or not. That's a whole different show.
Well, that's the 4 o'clock. We're good.
4 o'clock. That's the show they don't want me to do. That's the one where everyone, my publicist, is like, "Don't you talk about that? No politics." So,
well, we're living in a world right now where now that we've done this isolation thing, we've all been inside our houses. You talked a little bit about podcasts a little bit before I came on. Podcast, what we're doing right here on social media. This is the new platform to talk about all those things, whether it's political, non-political, doesn't really matter. What we're finding is our entire lives are actually connected into the world of politics, which is great because for so long we've sat on the sidelines. The American voter has sat on the sidelines and voted as if it were happening to them, not to me, to those guys, to thems. But now we're realizing there is no them. It's us. The guys that the men and women that we voted into office are making decisions that affect our lives, not them, us. And that's a real important point to understand about where we stand now as American voters, as citizens, and as consumers of media.
Oh, you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I've been one of the greatest things, and right before I was on my own show, I was on one of my favorites, Liquid Lunch, which is normally on Newsmax. But John had to move his team. John Tobacco's the host. John had to move out of his studio in NYC. Newsmax, like so many others, took variety TV that doesn't cover round the clock, just bashing on politics. Took those shows off there. So John's show, Wayne Allen Root, and others on other networks we've seen taken off the air. Even on Fox has done it, and now they're online. And I love being able to go to Facebook or especially YouTube. I'm just jonesing on the platform YouTube has built to go on and watch shows like mine and support those folks because you're seeing these folks out there doing it. I watched this one and I'm going to plug it because I'm an NBA fan, but Rasheed Wallace and Bonzi Wells have an amazing show called Let's Get Technical, which is ironic because Rasheed Wallace, for like almost every season he played in the NBA, led the league in technicals. So it's a great show and it's funny and they're on there and they're just like two dudes, right? They're not Hall of Famers by any means. I mean, they're just great basketball players and it's been fun watching them. But do you think that they would have produced this at any other time? No, they were sitting at their house bored and they're like, hey, let's start a podcast and then do a bunch of Instagram lives. Sounds like a great idea. Will people tune in? Well, they had like 10,000 the other night when they were doing it right after Last Dance was on. So it's crazy.
Podcasting, and this is my main passion is audio, telling stories. And really a podcast, a good podcast, like you said, there's a lot of crap podcasts out there. A good podcast tells a story, and it tells a story that's relevant to you and to the people that you think are going to listen. It's not a crapshoot. It shouldn't be a scatter shot. I know a lot of podcasts do that. But one of the things I'm very proud of is I work with Stars and Stripes. So they are a famous newspaper company and media company, and they've jumped into the world of podcasting. We do a show called Military Matters. And one of the cool things about doing a podcast for Stars and Stripes is we get to be on the front lines of news, on the front lines of what matters. So we were talking about the coronavirus before a lot of people were, before it really hit the mainstream. I had a New Jersey doctor, and I'll tell you, when I started understanding the coronavirus, I was very skeptical about it. But when I did this podcast as a journalist, I got to sit down with an ER doctor, Dr. Kamal Khalsi, who was on the front lines in New Jersey fighting the coronavirus. I got to talk to the author of the World War Z, and I've talked to the BioShield, the bipartisan commission on biodefense for the country. Blew my mind.
Yeah.
These are people that were back in February, January, trying to warn the country, hey, this is coming. There's no stopping it. It's coming. Get ready. And nobody listened.
Thank you, America. We don't want to listen. I mean, and let's talk about it we're bringing on John LaRocchia is going to come on next, and he is former Hazmat One with New York Fire Department. Amazing. Just love those guys. But, I was just reading a VA report that the AP just released talking about how bad the conditions are at our VA hospitals. Again, shocking. Veterans are the last people. The VA is, again, ignored. But they said that these doctors, and I read a quote, they are reusing N95 masks. Like, here we are again, right? PTSD goes ignored. 22 veterans, and that number, Wes O'Donnell, who's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks, has said that number is truthfully really wrong, and it's wrong in a southerly manner, not in a northerly manner. Right. The number's closer to 40. I don't even want to know what it is now going through these 8 weeks of shelter in place, which, by the way, shelter in place is what we used to say in law enforcement to keep you inside your house, to keep you safe. Now we're doing it, I don't know. Hey, stay in your house. You could go to the grocery store, though. You're cool. And you go get takeout food, but shelter anyways. But again, they dropped the ball on PTSD and veteran suicide. And now we've got guys trapped in a hospital. They're coming home. They are recovering from injuries. We have our wounded in there. And we're making our medical staff taking care of America's greatest with reuse the mask. That doesn't make sense to me.
First of all, the VA. I have the privilege of working with an amazing online group called Connecting Vets. And this is the thing about media. We often neglect to pay attention to the things that matter. And staying on top of your news is important. Now, whether it leans left or right, that's another discussion to have. But you got to stay informed. I'm very privileged and very honored to work with connectingvets.com. They have some of the best reporters who are covering the VA, and they talk about the stories that you're probably ignoring, like what Congress is doing with these VA budgets, all these little things that are happening inside this huge organization. They're covering it on a daily basis. So highly encourage folks to go to connectingvets.com, check out their VA coverage. But the fact of the matter is, we're doing the VA. I'm not going to bash the VA because it's a ridiculously large organization. It's a huge organization tasked with an impossible task, and that is taking care of millions of veterans. On top of that, they are charged with being part of the pandemic response team. So they're one, I think, 3 or 4 organizations who are responsible for responding to this thing. So look, it's a government organization, and anybody who's paid taxes understands that government organizations are rife with red tape. It's a challenge to make it work. So I'm not going to beat them up too much, but yes, reusing N95 masks for sure the wrong thing to do. But like Jennifer said earlier, when you don't have much of a choice, you got to work with what you've got when you've got it. So adapt and overcome. I think that they're trying to do that, but the question really is, why should they have to adapt to silliness and overcome silliness?
Right. overcome. So, but I mean, that's something that's gone on. We could go on the VA topic, and I don't want to go too long on our schedule today, but totally. But we're going to have you back on very soon, so we can deep dive into this. I mean, obviously the VA is a pain point. I totally see your point. You're more on the front lines with it, with connecting vets. But before we let you go, just like I did with everyone else, please go ahead, plug away. Make sure you tell folks how they can reach out to you. Please plug your podcast, especially with Stars and Stripes. Gotta love them. They've been around, I think, longer than all the rest of us have. I mean, talk about a publication that ages everyone. I think goes back. I was looking up the numbers on it just out of curiosity, and it goes back to like the 1800s or something crazy like that. I mean, they've been writing about war for a long, long time. And you're doing great. I do want to tell you before we move on, and guess seriously, people watching and listening understand what Rod and his team have been doing. They're updating America's finest. To me, our frontline warriors listen to these podcasts, Stars and Stripes. Your podcast, you guys are straight to the point. I like that. And you don't sugarcoat anything, and you're educating, because you can listen to the left and to the right, and they're just going to feed you BS. They're going to feed you some sponsored crap, and they're not going to look out. And you guys look out for, hey, to me, our warrior class, the frontline folks who are actually on a front line that has somebody on the other side that wants to kill them. So it's important, and I thank you. So plug away, tell people how they can find you and listen to your podcast and doing all that good, fun, plugging away stuff.
Sure. So thanks again for bringing me on the show. Talk to the point with Eric Mitchell. Love it. You can check us out at stripes.com. We are the Military Matters podcast. We have several different, we're covering a gamut of everything that matters to the military. And you can find us on Twitter at StripesMMPod, at StripesMMPod. Always trying to find new stories, new ideas. So if you have an idea that you want us to cover, we're more than happy to do that. And also work with connectingvets.com. Next week, we are releasing a brand new show called Vet Story. I'm really excited about it. I promise this is unlike any other podcast with veterans you've heard. Vet Story. Come check it out. We are at connectingvets.com, an amazing news source. And you can always reach out to me personally on Twitter at RodPodRod. That's me. Thanks again, Eric. Thanks again.
I love it. Thanks, man. Thank you for coming on. We'll have you on a real good again soon. Thank you so much. Have yourself a great Thursday and enjoy your